Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Chris. Welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I would take a look at destroying drums with distortion. Let's go. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. Why am I holding the microphone right now? Because basically I have a ground hum issue, so if I let go, the things you have to deal with when making your YouTube videos. Anyway, moving on. So destroying drums with distortion. Why exactly would you do that? Why would you want that? We're gonna talk about it. So to start this off, I've got a couple of drum loops, drum beats that I've kind of assembled to give us a taste of some different styles and why we would use this. So let's get started. I've just got this break. AJ Hall does these drum breaks that he does the break and then provides like a MIDI kick track, which is sick if you want to layer up some kicks. So let's start with this. Sounds great. Obviously, I've got a little layered kick in there, so we've got a little bit of that low end heft. I've got at the bottom here just a couple of distortion plugins that I tend to reach for when I'm trying to achieve something. Now, obviously, they all distort, but you're going to hear they sound wildly different and can provide wildly different results. So let's hear what they sound like. Start with this decapitator. Nice. Drum bass. Berzerk. Black box. And last but not least, standard clip. So the last one's a bit subtle, I'll get into it a bit later and why I've chosen it, but to start us off, let me just kind of introduce what these plugins are doing and how I'm going to be using them. Mainly, obviously they're adding drive, that's step number one, and step number two is filtering. We're either removing or shaping a bit of the overall EQ curve. So with this plugin in particular, Decapitator, it's one I reach for all the time because it's quick and dirty and you have a couple of these styles at the bottom which emulate different characters, different types of transformers and, saturation devices. I find straight away, once you put it on this E mode, that's usually my favorite when it comes to drums. It tends to provide a little bit of extra low end and with the, mix and the drive, you can very much blend it to taste. Okay, to continue, let's take it to the second drum beat I've made. This is just a more trappy, modern kind of style so we can see what's going on and how these plugins are affecting the drums. Drum bass. Berzerk. Black box. Ooh. And standard clip. Okay, so as you can hear, wildly different sounds. Let me just experiment to dig a bit deeper with some of these plugins, just so you can see what variations we can get from them. So in particular, I want to dig into Berzerk. Now, this was a plugin I got for free, maybe on Black Friday or something, and again, ended up being one of the plugins I reach for all the time because of how strange it can be, how unique it can drive things. It's got this really simple drive, got a couple of different characters here, you got a bit of a list, And then you have this kind of density and Berzerk button. So what these are doing are kind of tweaking the characters and adding a lot of spikes in the wave to kind of get these really unique harmonic characters out of it. Woo! That's hard. So you can see I'm clipping the output a bit, so I'll just bring it back. Woo! With nothing, full wet. See it in between. Oh, nice. 30% sounds awesome. And then we're back to buzzed.
All buzz, no barf.
Okay, so that's your Berzerk plugin. I'm going to quickly get into the black box one because this, again, maybe not necessarily something people always use on drums. They maybe tend to use it more on the mix bus or on a piano or something, you know, whatever needs a little bit of harmonic excitement. But what I really like in particular about this plugin is the fact that it can be subtle, it can be quite extreme, but again, it's got different modes for how you can saturate, right? So if we look at it, it's got this pentode and this triode. Again, two different types of distortion. I'm not going to get into what the difference is because we'll be here for ages. You got those. One is feeding into the other, right? And in terms of signal flow, the pentode level goes into the triode. So if you change one, you got to change the other. And then at the bottom, you got the saturation. This is a parallel saturation. What does that mean? It means that it's taking a copy of the signal, distorting it, and then you're just, this is your wet dry. So you're just kind of blending in how much of that parallel distortion you want. Whether or not it's before or after these, I don't know. You have to check the manual for that. But sounds great. And then, so to partner with this parallel saturation, you've also got this low, flat, high saturation frequency, which basically just, it's kind of like a selective EQ on the distortion. So if you need a bit more low end, maybe you want to have it on low. If you want a bit more clarity, maybe you put it on high. I like it on flat. It does a pretty good job at keeping everything pretty nice. So on that note, let's take it to the third beat. I've just got a basic hip hop beat I've made, something a bit more familiar, and let's see what different sounds we can get from this. So let's turn the parallel saturation off. You can hear without it. So that's what it's adding. Pull these back a bit. Let's see what the difference is between them. Again, very subtle. If you want a brief idea of what's going on, pentode is even harmonics, triode is odd harmonics, if I'm correct. So one sounds more pleasant, the other sounds makes it a bit brighter to your ears. That's basically the concept, very lightly, so don't don't hate me for it. Yeah, and lastly, you've just got this alt tube if you really want to smack the parallel. It's kind of like that punish mode on the decapitator. Just adds a bunch of level into it. So let's hear it with that, and then we'll move on to the last bit. Chucking a bit of air. So without and with. fantastic. It's literally what I want. I just want my drums to sound like a hip hop song, right? That's what we all want, isn't it? Okay, now lastly, we've got this pop beat. I just thought I'd change it up to keep it, safe for everyone. Got some pop drums, some Oliver loops, all that good stuff, you know how it is. And again, just gonna distort it, see what it sounds like. Do we like it? Are we gonna learn something from it? Maybe. Let's see. Alright, so this is what we got. Kind of disco vibe. Alright. So far, Drum Bus has actually been killing it for drums. And I know that sounds funny, but sometimes when you have an idea in mind, it's not about how you get there, but just, what the quickest way to do it, with the least amount of time. And in this case, Drum Bus has been distorting drums, making it punchy, fat, keeping all the low end. It's just things I keep in mind, when I'm distorting stuff. Like, it's stuff you'll have to keep in mind. That's why all of these sound so different. It's because they're all doing different things behind the scenes. Drum Bus just happens to be doing a really solid job at just ticking all these things, not being too extreme. What does that say? Stock plugin, stock Ableton plugin. It's the same with Logic, their stock stuff is great, but you got options. Oh. All right, now lastly, standard clip. Now, why did I include this? Is this really distorting? Is this like, what's the point of this? Now, standard clip is a limiter. It's not really distorting, but what it's doing is it's cutting off the peaks of sounds that pass a threshold, kind of like a compressor. It's taking the audio down every time the amplitude, passes that threshold or whatever. So why am I using this to distort? Because, what distortion is basically that. It's kind of cutting off the peaks. In this case, it's clipping, which, if you remember on the Berzerk plugin, is another type of distortion. How I'm going to use it, though, is to level out my drums, and in turn, because of how this works and how extreme it is, it keeps it quite transparent but also quite punchy. It's fascinating. All right, so let's take a look at how this sounds. I'll have a fiddle with the plugin and you can see what variations we can get out of it. You can really hear that distortion down there. But what I think with this is you have a couple different options on how to go about it, right? Because you got this main percent thing, and as you can see, it's pulling the threshold down. It's also shaping that knee or that kind of bend on the threshold right there. And what this is doing, as you can see the red line moving below the main threshold, that's kind of making your window per se of how much you're clipping bigger. So get this, if I had a smaller percentage, right, I had 3%, I would need to go all the way down here to start like kind of clipping. You can see the peaks that are being clipped off here. But if I take it back to 0 and I add a larger percent, now I'm starting to attack the peaks, and the further I bring this down, you see it's got a larger effect of how much it's clipping. That's all fine and great. It's a bit technical, it doesn't really sound like distortion. It's doing a different thing. But then again, for drums, it's making it sound punchy, it's making it sound, thick, keeping the low end, all of these things that people consider what they want their drums to sound like at the end of the day. So I'm just going to finish off by saying thank you for hanging about to watch the video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned some things about distorting drums and why it might sound nice at times. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. We've got the subscribe button down there. You can like and comment. Appreciate everyone who's been commenting and giving me feedback so far. It's been a really lovely learning process. Still getting into this myself, so come hang for the fun and the musical goodness that we'll be creating here today, as well as just having a chill time. So thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.